Hello, everybody. This is SMK here, and today I'm going to be talking about some Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 stuff, namely the recent, I guess, roster leak for the game. It wasn't, I mean, it's hard to say if it's actually a leak or not. I guess it is because maybe, like, it came from some um, journalist, a gaming journalist website, media outlet, whatever, not an American one. And I think Juke's video had some other video of the character select screen that we weren't supposed to see, like what characters were supposed to be there. And so that sort of proved the other source. But anyway, I guess I could try to link what I'm talking about in the description or something like that. But anyway, the point of this video is that we're going to talk about the most interesting aspect of it, which is the fact that the Time Breaker characters are actually separate character slots for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. Now, for those not aware, the Time Breaker characters are basically reskins of existing villain characters, such as Broly, Janemba, Cell, Kid Buu, Frieza, Metal Cooler, and some others. Basically, they're reskins in the sense that they're colored like purplish pink, and they have an infinity symbol plastered on their forehead. And in the first game, in Xenoverse 1, there was a similar form for these characters called a villainous form. And basically, that was differently colored. It was Demigra's way of controlling and possessing the villains and making them stronger. I guess Toa could do it too, or something like that. But anyway, those villainous forms, they were just alternate like costumes. Like Xenoverse 1 had this interesting costume slot system where a costume also had different skills and stats. So, for example, you could have Goku with out his T-shirt, and he would have Super Saiyan. He would, or no. The one I'm thinking of is actually the one from the Saiyan Saga, where he's without his T-shirt, he has Kaioken ×3, and he would have Kamehameha, and he'd have Solar Flare, and stuff like that. But then, like, a different Goku, like, let's say, Tattered Clothes Goku from the Namek Saga, or Frieza Saga, he would have Super Saiyan, Kamehameha, and, like, two other skills that would fit that Goku from that particular point in the anime. And so those villainous forms basically worked like that, where they were, that different colored character with the different colored aura, but they'd have these special skills that only they could have. You couldn't even have a custom character with these moves. It was like Baked Sphere, Darkness Mixer, some bloody thing. It like made you slow down when you got hit by it, stuff like that. And these were just alternate costumes. They did not take character slots. And so it makes this a real big disappointment for a lot of people in the community, is the fact that they've got these similar forms, these Time Breaker forms, and they're taking up character slots. Now, you can make the argument that they made these characters, and then they're taking up these reskinned characters. They're taking up those slots of what could potentially be other characters. You could make that argument, but that argument isn't exactly accurate. What I think is really going on here is the fact that Dimps is padding the roster. And what does padding mean? Padding means like filling the roster up with basically the same character again, in order to make the roster look bigger than it actually is. And the reason why I think they're doing this is it could be because the plans for the roster that they had, they aren't able to meet what they planned because of the release date. I think what happened is Bandai Namco set this release date. They thought they could hit this release date and do the characters they wanted to do, but instead what ended up happening is, as they got closer and closer to release now, they don't want to delay the game, so they realized that, okay, we have these Time Breaker characters. What should we do with them? And, it might just be a thing where Dimps, or maybe even Bamco, thought, why not just make them their own character slots, and that way the roster looks bigger than it actually is. And they can say on the back of the box or in any marketing that, look, we have 85 characters. We don't, 85 characters, right? Or 87, however many it actually ends up being. the predicted amount is based on what we saw is 85. And that looks better for them. That captures that casual market that isn't going to look into the game nearly as much. That looks good on the back of the box. That looks good on marketing material. You don't want to say 72 to 75 characters counting variations. You don't want to say that. That looks bad. I mean, you don't want to say 72 to 75 characters and then 85 characters counting variations. That's what I meant to say. You don't want to say that because that just makes people roll their eyes. That doesn't make them want to buy the game. When they hear that flat number of 85 characters, that gets them to buy the game. Or is rather an additional incentive to buy the game. Does anyone remember what it said on the back of the box for Budokai 3 back in the day? They've done this before. On the back of the box of Budokai 3, I believe it says something along the lines of 43 characters with transformations. So what that is saying is there's 43 characters if you count transformations, but if you don't count transformations, that number goes down to like 38 or something like that. So they literally went ahead and misled consumers to some extent by saying 43 characters instead of being honest and saying 38 characters first and then 43 if you count transformations and fusions. So that was a big contention back in the day. I remember that. I remember people getting a little bit kind of upset about that, like how they did that. And they're doing it again with this game, except this time they're actually counting those Timebreaker characters as part of the full roster because they are separate characters. They are putting them on there as character slots. They get their own character slot. So this is a big... No, I mean, it's not a huge problem. The game is still going to be pretty good. It's really disappointing because, it seemed like Dimps had everything else together, like, pretty well. Like that whole variations thing in the first game, that was supposed to solve this problem. That was supposed to be something that would address this, where, like, we wouldn't have this kind of thing happen. But now we're having it happen, and it just makes me scratch my head. It's like, what happened here? Well, it's basically what I said. I basically think that as they got closer and closer to release, they just couldn't get these other characters they had planned done in time, so they decided to pad the roster with these Timebreaker characters, and that's just how it's gone down. They've even gone to the point where something like an old variation has become their own character, and we saw it with Great Saiyaman. They separated Great Saiyaman from Adult Gohan. Now, unless he's got different strings, there's literally no reason to do that. Or, like, different voice lines, there's literally no reason to do that. But if he has different voice lines and he has maybe slightly different strings, then that's an excuse enough to separate him from Adult Gohan. But if he doesn't have any different lines of dialogue as he's fighting or anything like that, then there was no point in separating him. There was literally no point in doing that. And I think they could even accomplish what I said by keeping him a variation anyway. So that's another thing they've done to help even further pad the roster and increase its size. Now, I'm not going to defend Dimps on this. It's pretty disappointed. I'm disappointed about it. I'm disappointed about it. And I almost think that a lot of the DLC that's going to be coming for this game, one of the packs is definitely going to have characters that technically should have been in the base roster. Characters like Bojack, Android 13, maybe PyCon, those characters should have been in the base game to begin with. And then they're just going to sell them to us as DLC instead. And then, of course, the super characters. Now, the super characters we weren't expecting to be DLC anyway. I mean, expecting to be in the base roster anyway. It's expected that those would be DLC. But these other characters, we were kind of banking on them, kind of like just holding them back and keeping them secret for us to discover in the game. But now that we've seen that there's these Timebreaker variations as actual character slots, that doesn't really give much hope. They even have a Timebreaker Mira, which makes literally no sense, and is just probably, again, they just felt like doing it. It's probably something stupid happens in the story that explains it, but it doesn't really make a whole ton of sense to do that. And It's very disappointing, and I wish they hadn't done it. Everybody wishes they hadn't done it, but they did. And so there's really not much else I can say about this, I guess. I just hope that I guess the other thing to glean from this information was that there's a possibility of only being 1, 2, 3, or 4 characters that we don't know about yet, because they didn't look at the exact end of the roster on the screenshot, and we only see like one locked icon underneath the Timebreaker Mira. So, and it doesn't show like that's the end of the roster. I mean, it could be, and it would make sense if it ended right at where Mira is, but we don't know for sure. So that's why I say 1 to 3 or 4 characters, because there could be another column of characters at the end. We just don't know. So we're going to be waiting on that, I guess, for a while. We might not find out till the beta or even until the game comes out. But until then, right now, all we have is kind of like just disappointment town with the roster at the moment, because only really 13 to 14 new characters is kind of disappointing. You know, that's all I can really say about it at this point. Other than that, you know, feel free to comment on what you think about this, and if you think what my assessment of the situation is accurate, if you agree or disagree, or you know, whatever you think might be the reason for why they're doing this. I think my assessment makes a lot of sense. Until next time, later, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll be doing more videos like this. Like I said, peace.
It's the birth of the mightiest Martian.